The DOJ has made their official announcement. New York City, Portland, Seattle are anarchist jurisdictions as per Donald Trump's previous memorandum, where he sought to strip funding away from several jurisdictions that were allowing far-left riots to persist. In a statement from the DOJ, they say the Department of Justice identifies New York City, Portland, and Seattle as jurisdictions permitting violence and destruction of property. Identification is response to presidential memorandum reviewing federal funding to state and local governments that are permitting anarchy, violence, and destruction in American cities. I would like to just stop for a moment and highlight the phrase anarchist jurisdiction. I love the combination of words. It does make sense, but like on its own in a vacuum, it doesn't. If you were to like look at a swath of land out in the wilderness and say that's anarchist jurisdiction, you're saying there's nothing there. But it does make sense in the context of if there's like a city which has clear dividing lines and they are allowing lawlessness, chaos, and looting, then I think we understand the gist of what it means to say anarchist jurisdiction, meaning it is a specific area isolated from other areas, basically an island unto itself of crime being permitted. The DOJ says the U.S. Department of Justice today identified the following 3 jurisdictions that have permitted violence and destruction of property to persist and have refused to undertake reasonable measures to counteract criminal activities. New York City, Portland, Seattle. Wow, they keep saying the same thing over and over again. The Department of Justice is continuing to work to identify jurisdictions that meet the criteria set out in the president's memorandum and will periodically update the list of selected jurisdictions as required therein. The list was published on DOJ's website today in response to President Trump's memorandum on September 2nd, 2020, entitled Memorandum on Reviewing Funding to State and Local Government Recipients that are Permitting Anarchy, Violence, and Destruction in American Cities. Quote, when state and local leaders impede their own law enforcement officers and agencies from doing their jobs, it endangers innocent citizens who deserve to be protected, including those who are trying to peacefully assemble and protest, said Attorney General William P. Barr. We cannot allow federal tax dollars to be wasted when the safety of the citizenry hangs in the balance. It is my hope that the cities identified by the Department of Justice today will reverse course and become serious about performing the basic function of government and start protecting their own citizens. Criteria for evaluating each city is below. So they give us their list now, which says whether a jurisdiction forbids the police force from intervening to restore order amid widespread or sustained violence or destruction. I think all 3 of those cities, you can check off that box. Whether a jurisdiction has withdrawn law enforcement protection from a geographical area or structure that law enforcement officers are lawfully entitled to access, but have been officially prevented from accessing or permitted to access only in exceptional circumstances, except when law enforcement officers are briefly withheld as a tactical decision intended to resolve safely and expeditiously a specific and ongoing unlawful incident posing an imminent threat to safety of individuals or law enforcement officers. I got to stop right there. I'm just going to say it sounds like they looked at what these cities had in common and then just wrote up a list. Here's what they're doing. It doesn't seem like they made the list and then asked whether the cities fit these things, because these cities are the criteria for the comments made by the president in the first place. They say whether a jurisdiction disempowers or defunds police departments. Well, that's like 129 different different cities. Whether a jurisdiction unreasonably refuses to accept offers of law enforcement assistance from the federal government, any other related factors the attorney general deems appropriate. And there it is. It doesn't matter. If Bill Barr says it is so, it is so. Now, of course, they've identified a pattern between many of these cities, and I think it's fair. Now, look, whether or not they should have their funding stripped, it's not up to me. I'm not the guy who's going to come out here and tell you, how the government should be run or funded. I'll just tell you this. Donald Trump won an election. Donald Trump has then said, we're going to take funding away if you don't enforce the law. Earlier, I did a segment about a man named Jake Gardner, who took his own life recently in a shocking and tragic story. And the left is gloating and laughing and calling this guy a white supremacist. And the lies are insane. Absolutely insane. And I'll tell you what, man. I recorded this segment and I said, Trump must do something. Something must be done. Well, something's being done. Taking funding away. And, they're going to complain. They're going to spit and yell. And they're going to say, it's not fair. You can't take our funding from us. We'll sue. Funding allows the machine to work. It is lubricant for the gears. Now they run the machine, they do the labor, the people in these states. But without funding, then the machine grinds to a halt. I wouldn't necessarily equate it to like fuel, but kind of. Without money, they can't operate. They can't oppress innocent people who are defending themselves. They can't target small business owners and destroy their lives. Now, I think Trump needs to do more. I don't know what this will do other than make things worse, to be completely honest. It's what I refer to as like a Chinese finger trap problem. You know, you stick your fingers in the trap, you can't pull out the harder you pull, you got to push in. It's counterintuitive. But taking away federal funding from these cities is just going to result in a further defunded police force. However, I think Trump is pulling what's called a big ask. You may be familiar with this. He basically says, here's how it works. You go up to somebody and you say, you go to McDonald's and they'll say, how much do you want to work here? You give them a ridiculous number. I want $30 an hour to run the cash register. And they're going to be like, what? $30? Okay, 15, cut it in half. And they go, oh, okay, 15's way lower. The big ask, you ask for something huge so you can walk people back to where you actually want to be. A good example of Trump's big ask is Trump coming out and saying, I'm going to build a big, beautiful wall 30 feet high from sea to shining sea. He does a thing with his hands. It's really funny. And what did we get? Select bollard fencing in key areas where illegal immigration was a problem. So once they all freak out like, whoa, 30-foot concrete wall, are you nuts? That's too expensive. Trump takes the loss of only getting his select bollard fencing, which dramatically reduces smuggling, crime, trafficking, etc. That's what the big ask is. So my prediction on this is, and we'll look at these individual cities and see what's going to happen. My prediction is that they are going to fold. They're going to fold. They're going to say, Trump, tell us what you want us to do. Please, we need that sweet, sweet money. You know, if they can't gain power from it, and if it weakens them, they're not going to want to do it. I think I know how these politicians work. So Trump says, carrot or stick, you let me know. I'm going to take away your funding because of this. They're going to come crawling back and say, wait, don't. Trump's going to say, well, you know, they started doing what they were supposed to do, so we're not going to take their funding away. I think that may be the effort. The only problem, COVID has absolutely decimated the tax base for these cities. So they don't have money. They're getting more money taken from them. It's going to make everything worse in these cities. That's rough. What do you do? You know, I don't like the idea of overt defunding because these cities need to function. But if they're dysfunctional and it's not the federal government's fault and it's not our fault and we don't live there, why are we paying for it as a nation? Federal funding going to these dysfunctional cities encourages the dysfunction. They will never fix it if they keep getting an influx of cash. Trump may be doing the right thing. I don't know for sure. I'm not here to be an arbiter of morality or a fiscal manager in any capacity. I'm just telling you what I think we may end up seeing. It's entirely possible that taking the funds away just makes life worse in these cities. Crime may skyrocket. It may hinder the police's ability to do their job. And this is part of why Joe Biden is saying Trump wants to defund the police. It's not necessarily untrue, taking away federal grants from any of these jurisdictions. The problem is, if I give you $100 and I say, I'm going to give you $100 and then I want you to, sweep up the trash. And then you don't sweep up the trash. I'm going to say, give me my $100 back. In fact, I'm going to say, next time I'm going to pay you after you do the job. If the feds are giving money to these cities for policing, and they're not policing, then why is any money being given to them? And therein lies the problem. Joe Biden is being a bit disingenuous when he says Trump wants to defund the police. No, there's just money sitting there doing nothing. And he's saying, if you're not going to take it, I'm going to take it. What's the point? And to be fair, Joe Biden definitely walked back his comments on defunding the police and is calling for more funds for police. That needs to be clear. Take a look at what's going on in New York City. So we got the three cities, we got their criteria. New York City says, the DOJ says of New York City, shootings have been on the rise since looting and protests began on or about May 28th. For July 2020, shootings increased from 88 to 244 over July 2019. It's a 177% increase. In August 2020, shootings increased from 91 to 242, a 166% increase. While the city faced increased unrest, gun violence, and property damage, the New York City Council cut $1 billion from NYPD's FY21 budget. The budget resulted in the cancellation of the new police recruiting class, cuts to overtime spending, and the transfer of certain police functions, including school safety, out of the NYPD. Meanwhile, the Manhattan and Brooklyn district attorneys have declined to prosecute charges of disorderly conduct and unlawful assembly arising from the protests. And the district attorneys in Queens and the Bronx have declined to prosecute other protest-related charges. Both Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo have forcefully rejected federal law enforcement support. So good. Bring it on. And I'm not the only one who thinks so. I bring you to the new and wonderful painting from the New York Post. Massive F. Cuomo and de Blasio mural painted on Brooklyn Street. All right. I'll take it. Hey, look, we can argue about whether or not the government should be funding Black Lives Matter murals splattered all over the streets and cities around the country. We may argue. The left may say, we refuse to allow a MAGA 2020 painting on the street. Harumph, we say. And then we'll say, then why do you get to paint Black Lives Matter? It's unfair. But when you paint this, I think we all just stop and go, all right, this one I'm good with. All right, if I don't know who paid for it, clearly not the city. But I'm pretty confident left and right will come together holding hands and singing songs under a rainbow for this one. Maybe this is the unifying message we needed all along. Not Black Lives Matter. I understand that some people really like it. Not Blue Lives Matter, because I understand that some people really like that too. What can we all come together and support? F. Cuomo and de Blasio. Hear, hear. I love how the left was calling for Mayor Ted Wheeler of Portland to resign. And I'm like, yes, absolutely. Get rid of that guy. The left and the right both think he's bad. The only problem is what comes next. I think we can agree that Cuomo and de Blasio are trash. For a lot of reasons, Cuomo put sick COVID patients in nursing homes, killing lots of people. That dude is sick. And he wasn't the only one. De Blasio is trash as well. His wife's got like a multi-million-dollar staff while he's contemplating, the city might have to lay off EMTs and stuff like that. Just get out, it's emergency service personnel. Just get out of here, dude. I don't like any of these guys. I don't think the leftists do either. But what comes next? You get rid of Ted Wheeler. Who comes next? As much as I might say it's funny to get rid of Ted Wheeler, he is, it reminds me of remember in Spider-Man, the movie? When like Tobey Maguire is in front of the train and he's holding the webs and like she's trying to stop the train. He's like, ah, and he's like screaming. Not to give any like strong credit to Ted Wheeler, but who comes next is the mayor who self-describes as Antifa. So they want him to resign so that she can come in and win. And then the city will be ruled by extremist communists. I don't think that's a good idea. As much as Ted Wheeler is absolute trash at his job and has no idea what he's doing. And not to equate him with Spider-Man, but you get the point. He's screaming like, and being crushed by the train that is the far left extremism rising in Portland. And the only difference between him and Spider-Man is that Spider-Man actually stopped the train. This guy won't. This guy is just going like, oh no, and he's going to get knocked right out of the way and he's going to lose. So no, he's not that much like Spider-Man. So while we can all agree, F. Cuomo and de Blasio, then let's take a look at Portland, Oregon. They say, over in Portland, this month, Portland marked 100 consecutive nights of protests marred by vandalism, chaos, and even killing. Those bent on violence regularly started fires, threw projectiles at law enforcement officers, and destroyed property. Numerous law enforcement officers, among others, suffered injury. Shootings increased by more than 140% in June and July compared to last year. In the midst of this violence, the Portland City Council cut $15 million from the police bureau, eliminating 84 positions. Crucially, the cuts included the gun violence reduction team, which investigates shooting, and several positions from the police team that responds to emergency incidents. In August, Portland Mayor Wheeler sent a letter to President Trump expressly rejecting the administration's offer of federal law enforcement to stop the violent protests. Why are we giving them money if they don't use it? And what are they doing with that money? We give them, what? We would give millions and millions of dollars in federal funding. And then what? They just use it for other things? Been there, done that. I've seen exactly how that plays out. I remember when I was a kid, all the kids in the community wanted a skate park. So we all came together, high-fived, and it was actually one kid who raised a bunch of money. And then what did the city do? The local park district built a garbage gutter trash park that nobody wanted to actually use because it was like trash. But we saw that beautiful landscaping. Now, that's just, I guess, a young person's conspiracy theory. Where did our skate park money go and why did you plant new flowers? Maybe we were wrong. maybe they just sat on the money, but I'm kind of convinced they took the budget and said, the skate park's cheap. Let's use the money for whatever we want. Well, over in Seattle, they say, for nearly a month starting in June, the city of Seattle permitted anarchists and activists to seize 6 square blocks of Capitol Hill, call it the Chaz. Law enforcement and firefighters were precluded from entering the territory. The Seattle Police Department was ordered to abandon their precinct. Person-related crime in the CHOP increased 525% from the same period. That's crazy, man. And wow. They say it includes Mayor Durkin's own count, 2 additional homicides, 6 robberies, and 16 additional aggravated assaults. The CHOP was allowed to stand for nearly a month, during which time 2 teenagers were shot and killed in the zone. The Seattle City Council, Mayor Durkin, and Washington Governor Jay Inslee publicly rejected federal involvement in law enforcement activities within the city of Seattle. Why are we giving them money if they're not going to use it? If they're not going to enforce the law? I don't think we should give them money. But I'd like to take you now into a portal. Before us is the looking glass. And when we look into it, the world is inverted. What do you think we would see as we enter in and pass through a mirror world, as it were? Ah, yes, the mirror world. The Intercept has a story. I don't know if I have it pulled up, where they talk about a DA Mike Schmidt in Portland. And this is kind of like a mirror reality story that I was really, really interested in. They frame it as though the DA is trying to stop overly aggressive police in Portland. Police who are arresting people who are peaceful protesters. Bravo, Glenn Greenwald. You know, I think it's really funny because I do like a lot of what Glenn Greenwald has to say, but he's really created an outlet that just engages in more Trump derangement syndrome. We've seen the videos. What do we get? People throwing firebombs, mortars going off. No, look, man, I'm sorry. We know what's going on in Portland, okay? Here's from Katu2. U.S. Department of Justice identifies Portland as jurisdiction permitting violence. We've seen the photos. We've seen the videos. They're burning trash. They're attacking people. It was 100+ days. Guess what? Were there some peaceful protesters who got arrested? Yes. Should they have their charges dropped? Some of them, yes. All of them, no. Charges are not, you're not presumed to be guilty. When the DA says you are being charged with this crime, you go and stand trial. It is not the position of the state to just say, we're ignoring the crime. If the police arrest you and they say, I accuse you of obstructing a roadway, you have not been convicted of obstructing a roadway. You go to court, you say, I want a jury trial. They'll roll their eyes and say, case dismissed. Why? Nobody wants to spend time going over a jury trial because they claimed you blocked a roadway. Nobody. They're hoping you just plead guilty. The DA letting these people go is subverting the rule of law. You get arrested. You are accused. The DA says, here are the charges. Here's the evidence. Your defense says, here's the evidence. You request a jury trial. Some places, I don't know how it works, but you can request a judge to preside over your trial and ultimately make the decision, or you can plead guilty. And then they'll give you like a reduced sentence. It's called the trial tax or the jury tax, depending on who you're talking to. The general idea is that if you go to trial, they're going to try and give you a harsher penalty. Or the inverse, they say, is if you accept responsibility, we'll reduce the penalty. I think it's more of a coercive move by the government. I'm no fan. But look, you get arrested, you're not guilty. The DA should absolutely be prosecuting these charges, and then most of them will probably get off with a slap on the wrist. That's the way it's supposed to work. But when the DA explicitly says we're not going to do it, don't be surprised then when the DOJ comes in and says, we are going to take away your funding. Because, like I said, why should we fund what you're not doing? You know what I mean? Like you don't pay people to do nothing. They're supposed to be doing something with the money. I think it's funny that Joe Biden equates this to defunding the police. It's like, well, listen, it's actually not defunding them. And I'll explain why. Joe Biden says Donald Trump taking funds away is defunding the police. However, if the police are funded to the tune in New York City, $6 billion, and they cut $1 billion off the NYPD budget, there is a gap of $1 billion. So that's about, what is that, like 17% of their budget, I believe. If Donald Trump then said, okay, if you're going to remove 17% of your police force, defunded, firing these people, well, then we'll cut down the funds as well, right? It's not defunding the police if the funds don't go anywhere because you're not enforcing the law. It's not defunding the police if you're removing funds and cutting down your own police force. Actually, it would make a whole lot of sense if Trump cut down in the exact same way that these jurisdictions were cutting down. Now, I think, however, this ultimately may result in like a total suspension of federal funds. Maybe a bit extreme. Maybe. And that's why I said in the beginning, I think this could ultimately result in worse things for these cities that honestly, I don't want to see happen. But here is the hard question. Hard question that needs to be asked. If Donald Trump takes these funds away, these funds from these cities, and it results in people getting hurt or losing their lives, I don't want to see that happen. And I think if these cities need the funds to do that, then it needs to happen. The problem is, if they're not protecting people, then what really, what do you do to stop this? The cities are dysfunctional completely. They're a hodgepodge mess. The mob is dictating what to do. I'll tell you what I want to see. How about Bill Barr? I want you to go to Omaha. I want you to go to Omaha, Nebraska, and say, you charged a man, Jake Gardner, who was defending himself clearly on camera. That is lawlessness. That is absolute lawlessness. You did not charge the criminals who attacked him and fled, did you? What happened to those guys? Maybe, I don't know. But Jake Gardner got charged. He lost his business. He lost his life. He lost everything. And then he took his life. And I think this is the opportunity to go and make right. Dysfunctional cities cannot be allowed to just be broken and fester. Eventually, you got to go in and try and fix the machine. If you've got a car that's breaking down and you just keep saying, just keep using it, eventually you're going to be like, dude, I'll put it this way. Let's say you keep filling up the tank and driving and smoke keeps bursting out and it keeps backfiring and spewing fire. You can't drive that, actually. You can get in trouble. You get pulled over. Fire, boom, out of the tailpipe or whatever. I don't know. I'm not a car guy. You get the point. Eventually, you got to stop and say, maybe you should stop driving this thing until you get it fixed. And then you have the people saying, no, we must fuel the vehicle. Whoa. We're going to stop putting fuel in it until you fix it because there's smoke spewing from it. In fact, you got to go get emissions testing, right? I'll use that as the analogy. New York, Portland, Seattle, and many other cities are constantly backfiring. Pop, pop. Gunshots. Good example of the bangs. Eventually, you got to say, hey, if we keep putting fuel into this backfiring is going to it's hurting people. And then they're going to say, yeah, but if we can't use the car, we can't. Well, I'll tell you what, man, at a certain point, you need to shut it down. And that looks like that's what the DOJ is doing. These cities need to figure out how to solve their problems. And they can't just allow these things to happen because giving into the mob is no solution. So I'll leave it there. We'll see how this plays out. Of course, the left is screeching, saying, what's even happening? None of this is ridiculous. They're just trying to take our funds away, blah, blah, blah. Whatever, man. When you win an election, you get to do it. That's it. Seriously, Trump's president. I don't know if it's right or wrong. I don't know if it'll work out or not. I just say, guys, it's a thing that happened. Okay, I'm not going to be able to calculate all the outcomes of this kind of maneuver. I'll tell you this, though. I like that Trump and the DOJ are taking action against the rioters, so I'll accept it. We'll see how it plays out in November if the voters come out in force. But I'll tell you what, New York, Seattle, and Portland, they go blue anyway, as if Trump cares about losing their vote. It's a problem. It is. Trump should be fighting for the votes of everybody. And I don't mean to put that just on Trump. I mean every president. They only care about the areas they think they can win. It's time to change that. It's time to start advocating for what we believe in and working for everybody. Maybe this is a start. I don't know. But I'll leave it there. Next segment's coming up at youtube.com/Timcast. It is my main channel. It's a different channel. That'll be at 4 p.m. Thanks so much for hanging out, and I will see you all then.